Hey Sainers, and welcome to Saints TV. In this video we're going to be previewing the West Coast game. We're playing West Coast at Optus Stadium Saturday night. We all know about West Coast. They're like 9 wins out of 10. They only lost in round 1 and they're sitting top of the ladder, and they just had a good win in Melbourne against Hawthorn, while we came off a more gallant sort of effort against Richmond. And it has to be said that it's probably a game where we're massive outsiders in this game. We're, I think, $11 in the odds, and good evening, Darren. We're $11 in the odds, and it's going to be very tough to see how we can win this game, but we've got to go into it with optimism. I've gone in every week with a little bit of optimism, and, you know, bits and pieces. Sometimes you're disappointed, sometimes you get a result, and it's really good to watch. Last week was a bit of a mix where we were really good against a very good team, probably the third best team in the league at the moment, in Richmond at the MCG. Them coming off a loss to West Coast, a pretty big loss to West Coast when they travelled there a couple of weeks ago, and lost by a good 40-odd points, which is something that they haven't dealt with for a long time. But West Coast have been actually pretty good this season. A lot of other seasons they've started like this, and we've always said, you know, they're kind of the teasers of the competition. They can't travel away from Perth. They're going to lose, you know, the second they go to the MCG, the second they go to Etihad, but they've actually travelled pretty well this season. I think their only loss was in round 1, and that was against Sydney in Sydney, but you feel like if they play Sydney again, they've got every chance of winning, and they've come across a lot of different teams. They've beaten some of the poorer teams in the competition, but they've beaten some of the better teams in the competition, like GWS, who have been a bit injured. They've handled some pretty good teams. They've beaten Geelong. Last week was a good effort. Hawthorn at Etihad, which some people and I even thought maybe Hawthorn had a chance of winning that, but they've gone through with that. So my thing is, they've gone so long with good performances that fingers crossed that there's one where we can kind of maybe surprise them. They can be a bit complacent. We can surprise them and take the 4 points. But I don't think that's really that sort of game where we're going there to absolutely win because we want to make finals. We're going there and we just want to freaking compete hard. We want to get stuck in. We want to make them work for the win. Even if they do win, we just want to make them earn it. We want to make them feel like they've been in a really hard AFL game, and it wasn't just a walkover. Like, the AFL prediction is basically talking us through, and I'll go through that in a moment. But basically, the first line is, this is all the ingredients for a mauling. It's like, well, that's a bit harsh. You can't just say this has all the ingredients of mauling. Should Saints fans just not watch it? Like, I feel like the AFL writers are just kids out of uni, and they haven't actually thought through what they're talking about. Have some sort of a balanced argument of why, obviously, West Coast is the best team in the league, but also why St Kilda has some little chance of causing a massive upset. Would be probably upset of the season right now, in terms of, it's like 16th versus 1st. So it could not be more opposite, really, based on but ladder position. But I think based on form, we might have picked up some form last week. I don't know. Do you guys think we picked up some form last week? There were players like Gresham that kicked 6. I thought Billings was a bit better. I thought Logan Austin was really good, and great timing for him to come in because Carlisle, firstly, bullshit that he gets 2 weeks for that. He cops a knee to the head from Fife. Tom Mitchell gets off. Hawkins doesn't get many weeks. Like, they've had other examples of worse reportable offences that have gotten off, because there's a lot of Brownlow favourites there, but because it's Carlisle, he just cops 2 weeks, and they don't even. It should have just been 1. Like, I can handle 1 week, but the fact it was 2, and he's our best player, is a load of shit for something that Jack Riewoldt clearly acted there, and he was fine for the rest of the game. Fair enough, they subbed him off, but he went for the ball. He didn't quite get there in time. He's a defender. That's what they do. They have to make contact with the forward. There's every chance in any sort of event on the footy field that someone's going to get knocked out. That doesn't mean that the other person has to be rubbed out. It's just the fact that it was Carlisle. He's got somewhat of a poor record, not with reportable offences, but in AFL in general. And they've just handed him 2 weeks where we've needed him because we're playing West Coast, who've got probably the best 2 talls in the league right now, in Kennedy and Darling, and Lightshet, who goes forward. But also, we're playing Sydney the week after, who've got Buddy Franklin, and a few other decent forwards, and it would have been perfect to have Carlisle for that. But we're going to miss him both weeks, which could open the door for another defender like a Hugh Goddard to come in, which I'll also talk through in changes and who might come in this week. So firstly, let's go through injury updates and who might come in this week. The Saints have just posted it, so I'll read it to you guys, and you tell me if any of these players have a chance of coming in. Obviously, we lose Carlisle. maybe a Paddy McCartan gets dropped, but I don't think he will. And then maybe talk about who comes back in. So, firstly, the AFL did announce that Mav Weller is fully fit, and they did a report like Saints retain, star forward, and I was thinking, who are they talking about? And I clicked on it, it was Mav Weller. Again, clickbaity sort of shitty writing. There's every chance that Mav Weller doesn't come straight back in. We've got too many of the same type. That means that someone like a Loney needs to come out. But I feel like Loney's actually been one of the better players the last 2 weeks. I don't think we're going to be needing Mav, but out in the West, we need a mature body. Do we drop a Clark? We can't. All those youngsters actually played really good last week. I can't think of someone. Maybe a Dunstan, but he's a different type of player, so you can't just bring him in for the sake of it. You need to have a reason. I don't think they do. So Mav Weller was in line to face Richmond in round 10 before being concussed in training, but he's back now. Another one is Rowan Marsh, who's played 5 games for the Saints this year, and the big man could be the answer in defence as Jake Carlisle misses through suspension. He hasn't really played defence like a Jake Carlisle, or really at all, in his career so far. I think it would be a massive gamble. I think you're better off having a Hugh Goddard back in there to just kind of stabilise, but he's also very inexperienced. David Armitage, he had like 40 disposals for Sandringham, 10 tackles. Apparently he was very good in terms of his leadership, and he was named best on ground. So it's hard to ignore that. Everyone gives Armo a bit of a bad rap, including me. But maybe a bit of leadership isn't a bad shout. But again, who do you drop? Do you drop a Dunstan for an Armitage? You can't. It's easy to say who you want in the team, but then you got to think about who the hell comes out. And I feel like Dunstan's the future, and if we go with Armo, we're going with Armo because he's had 40 at Sandy, but then if he does badly and Dunstan dominates, you can't win because then everyone's going to get on Armo's back saying he's too old, why'd we bring him in? And they're the same people that probably said, well, he had 40, bring him in. So you can't win from a coaching perspective. If you do either decision, keep Dunstan, lose Armo, or drop Dunstan and regain Armo, you can't win depending on if it pays off. If it does pay off, perfect. But if it doesn't, then we know the people are going to comment saying that he's been pretty poor. Ben Patton, who everyone wants to debut, he's another player that apparently has been very consistent for Sandringham. He's averaging over 20 possessions and 5 tackles, and he hasn't played a game for St Kilda at the moment. He's another player that could be a good sort of inside, more outsidey sort of mid. And he's been probably their most consistent player. He's always in the best. He's always done enough for the team. And he hasn't really had any sort of quiet games, which is a good sign. Joyce hasn't yet debuted after joining the club in 2017, but he's an athletic Irish defender. I know you guys have kind of asked me about him. He's been pretty good. He's 194 centimetres. He's very tall. And it would be good to trial him. But do you think having a Logan Austin and a Joyce, who's literally one combined game for St Kilda right now, is the best duo we can come up with to face Darling and Kennedy? It might get ugly if we do that. That's why I think Hugh Goddard, he hasn't had a lot of football in Saints colours last 2 years, but he's at least been exposed to it, and he's a good defender, he's a smart defender, and he's a bit of a swingman, so he might be able to allow other players to play different roles. So those are the players. There's Armitage, Goddard, Joyce, Patton, Mav Weller, and Marshall. So who do you guys think should come in for them? It's hard to see who can come out. I feel like you have to you've got to repay the faith of what was probably 80%, performance. There was, the last 20 minutes of the game we dropped off, but that you expect Richmond to be quite good, and once we kind of hit the front, they lifted, and we couldn't go with them. But that's what happens with inexperienced teams. But I don't want to keep using that as an excuse. I want to go over to Perth, and I want to see us play well. To K. John Smith, who's asking if I'm going to Perth. No, I can't. I was going to go, but I have a good friend who's coming down from Canberra, and he's then going to the UK to work for a very long time. So I'm decided that because I've already been to Perth, there's no point me going back. I went for the Freo game, if you guys saw, and I just wanted to hang out with him over the weekend and watch the game on the tally. But that doesn't mean I won't do my live review straight after the game, so stay tuned for that. It'll be around... The game starts at 8:10, it'll be around 11:30, so hopefully you guys are still up to watch that, and hopefully I'm not talking about how shit we were. Onwards to the AFL and what they've said about us. This is basically their opening line of their summary. They say the stage could be set for a mauling when struggling St Kilda returns to Perth for a second time this season. West Coast ruled off a 9th straight victory with a grinding road win over Hawthorn last round and can enter the mid-season bye a game clear on top with a victory. So it's every other week I'm kind of like, there's a little feeling inside me that tells me that we can get this, but this week I hate watching us play in Perth, against West Coast. It never ends well. It never goes well. We always get shafted by the umpires. We're always in the game for about 2 quarters and then Kennedy kicks 5 straight after being missing for the entire game, and that's the difference. I really hope I'm wrong this time, but I don't know if you guys remember any massive victories from... The only one I can remember was when Lenny Hayes went berserk in 2010, I think it was, 2010, 2011. He had 10 in the third quarter. We got 5 goals clear and then that was it. So I can't remember many other decent performances in Perth against West Coast. For Freo, sure, we've had many, but for West Coast. And if you look at the last 5 times, we beat West Coast at Etihad last year when Billings kicked that late goal. We won by 8 points, but then prior to that we lost by 19, which was a good effort because we nearly kicked over 100 points in that game. We then lost by 103 at Subiaco. We then lost by 95 at Subiaco. And then before that, at Etihad, we lost by 57 points. So, not great stomping ground, Subiaco or Etihad for that instance in that time. But I just want us to go there and I want us to just play attacking football. I love the way in that third quarter against Richmond that we took the game on and we saw reward, and it seemed like the players knew, okay, so this is how you do it. This is how we want to play. And you know how other weeks we've talked about it and we've said that... we don't have any sort of identifiable sort of game plan. That's how, at the template St Kilda, at our best, that's how we want to play and how we want to execute our skills. I feel like that third quarter, when we went on a roll and kicked 4 straight, watch that 15 minutes, and that's exactly how we want to play. It was high-pressure football, but it was good foot skills, fast into the 50, and it was isolated and not crowded by Paddy and Bruce and McCartan. Paddy, Bruce, and Membry all going up for the same ball and ruining the flow. It was very spread out. We played Gresham basically 1 out, and he always won the battle, either brought it to ground or out the back, and he kicked easy goals. That's exactly how I want us to play. It's a big ground, Optus Stadium. If you haven't been, go, because it's awesome. But it's a massive ground. We're playing the top team. I want us to throw some spanners into the works. I want us to be in the game at halftime. I want us to give them some sort of a scare. I don't want it to be over at halftime like some of the comments are saying, we'll be lucky to be 10 goals behind at halftime. That's bull. I don't want this to be like Carlton and Melbourne 2 weeks ago, where Carlton were literally not in the game at all. I want us to be really competitive, and I feel like, yes, we lose Carlisle, but apart from that, you saw a lot of players pushing from Sandy, which is great. And I feel like last week, a lot of the players in the first team actually lifted because they realised they got to stand for something. They don't want to be dropped. And they want to back the coach. And it looked like they wanted to back the coach, and that Richo was on the bench, and it seems to have some sort of effect on the on-field performance. Who would have thought that a coach on the ground versus a coach in the box wouldn't have had more impact? What do you think in soccer? They stand on the goal line and they're yelling orders. That's exactly it. And I liked that, when players came off after they did something well, Richo was right there, patted them on the back, said, mate, good job. Not just a kind of a quick phone call. It was literally a face-to-face, good job. Or if they did something wrong, he brings them off, gives them a chat and says, mate, don't do that again, like he did with Marshall that time. And then they learn from it. So I feel like that's a bit more personal from Richo. That's a bit more one-on-one and intimate. And I feel like that's something that can benefit the team. And especially if another team gets a run on, knowing that your coach is on the bench, he can calm the troops down directly. And there was a rumour going around that maybe Richo's only doing that that he's doing that because he was worried that his call, his instructions from the box weren't being delivered clearly enough from the assistants on the bench. And I think that's good on him to take that sort of initiative and to go to the bench and do that. I'll stop ranting now because I think I've covered off what I think of the game, is that it's going to be very fucking hard. But I want us to be competitive, and I don't want to talk about a 10-goal loss. I want us to be competitive, which means I don't want to lose by... And I know I hate saying this. I wouldn't tip us, but I don't want us to lose by more than 40 points if we do lose. Otherwise, fucking let's go for the win, and let's just play all-out attack. I don't care about the 4 points. I just want us to be competitive and give them a scare. But let's go through some of your comments. Jack says thoughts on why we aren't going for Tom Lynch. I think Tom Lynch is very dependent on the rest of the season and how our forwards go. Membry's kind of been up and down, but we know he can be a very good player. We're still holding our hopes on Paddy becoming that big gun forward. And I think Bruce, everyone's forgotten about Bruce, but he started full training again. And I actually can't wait to have him back, because every time I look at highlights of how we've had big wins in the past against Richmonds and GWS's last year, and other games like the Geelong one a couple of years ago, we won by a couple of points. Bruce has actually always been a very main part of those wins. Not because of his goals kicked or his disposals, but his impact on the contest and the amount of handballs he gets out to someone running past into an open goal. If we had like they don't do this anymore, I don't think, or they ever did, but statistics on assists per, for goals, like they do in soccer, I reckon Bruce would have been up there, because he's always assisting players. He's not doing it himself, but he's always somehow around it when it's happening, and no doubt he's had a say in that contest to then, create the goal. Darren says should do a 5-minute halftime live. That's not a bad idea. That's a really good idea when I'm free. Otherwise, when I'm at the ground, I'm with someone, and sometimes it's a bit hard to organise time. But every now and then, would you guys actually like that halftime? Instead of just doing a post, I'll do a live stream, and then we'll just kind of go, okay, halftime, we're getting dominated, and we can just talk about it like that. Otherwise, I'm happy to save it for the end of the game. Good suggestion though, Darren. I really like that. Anastasia says, reckon we can get Gaff, Sloan and Lynch. If that's a question, I think we can. Apparently we've got a lot of salary cap space. We don't have a lot of major players on big money, and we might potentially have, maybe 2 top 10 draft picks, depending on how our tables turn for the rest of the season. We could go with pick 2 or pick 3 if we don't improve from this point. But if nothing improves, we've got salary cap space. We're going to have a top 10 draft pick at a minimum. If we can have 2 in the top 20, you'd go hard for Gaff, Sloan. And I think Gaff and Sloan would be the priorities, but I think Lynch, if there's space and time, that would be one hell of a get. But have we seen a team go that big and get 3 superstars like that in an off-season ever? Like even Essendon did well to get, they got Sard, they got Devon Smith, and then they got Jake Stringer. This is Gaff, Sloan, Lynch. This is like next level to that, and everyone praised Essendon. And Essendon were actually up and coming and not had a bad season. They had finals that season. So for us, if we're having a poor season and we can pull off, even just a Gaff, I would love that. But if we can get all 3, we'd be a very good team, because it covers forward line, it covers midfield and leadership, and it covers an outside superstar that can use the ball all in their peak. That would be amazing. But if I had to pick 3 of them, I think I'd go Gaff. And we might see on the weekend why he's so good, which I'm worried about. We need mids, not defenders. We do need more midfielders. We need more outside midfielders. We've got a lot of half-back flankers and roaming defenders, but I feel like we need more outside mids. We're playing Steele on the outside. We're playing insiders on the outside, like a Dunstan. But I feel like we need to get players like Akers back. Hopefully Freeman can not get injured for the first time in a million years, and we can then see how the team can look on paper with some more outside run. David Elkins says, from a good source inside the club, McGovern deal will be McGovern, sorry, I forgot about him. McGovern deal will be 100% done, 7 million over 6 years. David, if that's breaking news, share this to all you Saints fans. It's done. McGovern's done, 110% by David. I trust you, David, that you've got a very good source. I'm not going to be one to say that that's definitely happening, but they did say that his agent was at the club a couple of days ago, or yesterday, or the day before, I can't remember. But they also managed Blake Acres, so if we had the chance of getting McGovern and they wanted Acres in return, would we do that? We don't know how we're getting McGovern. It could be just money. He's a free agent, but if we lose someone like an Acres to get a McGovern or a Gaff, would you guys go with that, or would you want to just back Acres in and skip out on an absolute superstar? That's a tough decision, because you may not be able to keep all of these youngsters and bring in all of these A-graders. There may be some back and forth on trades. And people did say Billings, people said Acres, a Paddy. I would love a McGovern. I feel like he is exactly what we need in the back line. He's a good kick, he's a great mark. He can also go forward and be dominant as a forward like his brother. I'd love that. Ian says, bring back Lenny. David says Harvey's 350th when we won. Harvey's 350th. That's good shout. That was a great game. Jack says, need to be smarter with our inside 50s. Our issue is we bomb it in, and the times that we get the ball we miss. 100%. If you look at the earlier post I did today, and it shows the stats between West Coast and Saints in terms of disposals and inside 50s, they're all really similar. Like, West Coast maybe get us by a couple. Hit-outs, they win by a mile because of Nat and Nui. But the rest of them, it's like 1 or 2 difference. And that just tells me that we're getting to the source, we're getting the ball inside 50 enough, we're generating enough scoring shots per game, we're just not converting them. So if you get some of these better plays around the ball, you get better results, and you might see a massive change in results. Carrie says, we have a good team, we just never show up on game day. I agree, I think on paper we're a very good team when we're fit, and I think a lot of it is just mental, and for most of the game last week I thought mentally we were switched on, and no doubt that then translated into a better overall performance on field. David also says, Dunstan is sore, so he'll miss. White injured, Carlisle suspension. So, again, David, you've got a very good source, mate. There's 3 there that we'll see tomorrow night if you're right. Dunstan out, White out, Carlisle out. I'm not too worried about those outs. Carlisle's obviously huge, but I think that we can replace the other 2 pretty well. Marcus says, hey, I'm not watching the Saints this weekend. I expect us to get, I'm not going to say the word, but killed. Bring back Luke Penny. Luke Penny, what an underrated defender he was. Ben says, you were praising Dunstan a couple of weeks ago, short memory. I was praising Dunstan because of his leadership qualities and because he for a period of time at the start of the season when everyone said he wasn't that good, he played really well. But then based on last week when everyone else lifted, he didn't lift. And if we still want to be competitive in these games, if there's someone else that's better, sure. I would probably, if he's not sore, like I think David just said, he's sore, so that's why he's going to miss. I would keep him in the team because he's a big body. We always know what we're going to get out of him, which is pressure and tackles. It may not be massive output in terms of disposals, but it's always going to be pressure on the ball carrier of the opposition. So I would keep him in if he's fit, but if David says that he's sore, he's out. Maybe Ben Patton comes in. Most likely they're going to go with Armitage, who has more experience, but I'd love for them to take a risk and go with Patton. We'll keep going. Poor Armo. David says, in Goddard, Patton and Armo. So we'll see again, David, if you're correct. Anastasia also says, I'm a true Saints supporter, and I'm not one to turn off the TV if we're losing. Like, hey, this season might not be our year, but as long as we show some form and play some solid footy, I will be happy. Good point. I mean, that's what I'm basically saying. I'm not expecting us to go there and win, but I'm expecting us to go there and try to win and play well and be competitive. And if we can get that and not the win, it's going to be like last week where I said that we didn't win, but it was the best loss for the season in that we were competitive and we were in the game up to our noses, and we were really good. Disgrace that players are spared suspension due to Brownlow taints them. Yeah, 100%. The fact that you're in a Brownlow running gives you a free rein to do whatever you want. Everything apart from maybe just clock someone like a Barry Hall. Wayne says, a big test for the boys this week. James says, can't believe Carlisle got 2 weeks and Rans didn't get a week. Yeah, it's ridiculous. Scooter says, Battle should play this week. Actually, that's a name that we haven't mentioned. He kicked 3 on the weekend from about 10 disposals. Again, you would have to probably drop a Loney or a Paddy, and I just feel like Paddy's doing enough to stay in, and Loney, it'd be hard to just drop him after probably 2 of his better games for the Saints, because we haven't said that he's been bad. Usually when Loney comes in, it's automatic that he's out the next week because he was poor. So far he's come in, he kicked 2 goals against Collingwood, and he laid a couple of good tackles, and he did quite well against Richmond. But I'm worried that maybe the bigger backline of West Coast might get the better of him. And before I go, guys, Debbie I'll just help you out, Debbie, because you're trying to get rid of these tickets. But Debbie's got 2 West Coast versus Saints tickets on sale, $66 each purchase price, selling for $100 for the 2. So you get a discount there. Aisle 5, 4, 6, row 6, seats 34 and 35, half forward flank, enter gate E. I went a couple of weeks ago, guys, so if you have a chance and you're around the area, I would contact Debbie. She's in this thread here, so click on her and you can get the tickets discounted. Optus Stadium is awesome. Even if we, go there and lose badly, I would go just for the stadium. The pre-game sort of setup they do with the music, AC/DC, the LED lighting on the screens, it's all first class and probably the best in the country right now. Better than Eddie had in the G by a mile in terms of technology. So I would go if you have a chance. And lastly, Shane Raymond says, let's smash the Eagles. Let's just go there, and even if we don't smash them on the scoreboard, smash them physically, get in there, tackle them hard. They're going to have the crowd behind them. It's going to be very, very, very difficult. As tough a game as we could have right now, and I say that every week, but this week, away to the ladder-leading Eagles, is going to be very hard. But I'm actually excited to watch it, and I hope you guys are too. Don't jump off the team yet. This could be one of those defining games. I just want to go there and have a really good performance, and if we can win it, it'll be one of the best wins we've ever seen from a Saints team, just because of how low we've gone and who we're playing and where we're playing them. It's going to be very interesting to watch. Anyway, guys, thanks very much for watching. Again, if you know any other Saints fans that aren't a part of this community, please share this post or invite them to the page. Tag them in the post. I want to grow this. We're nearly reaching, I think we've pushed past 3,500. I'd love to hit 4,000 in a couple of weeks and then push on. And I actually can't believe that we're even on 4,000. I feel like I've still got only like 40 people, but then when I go on my posts, I see you guys commenting and liking and sharing, and it's just awesome, and it makes me really happy to be a Saints fan, and I hope you are too, even though we're having a terrible season. But I'll leave it there, guys. Thanks very much for watching. Thanks, Jack, and I'll see you guys after hopefully a good performance on Saturday night. See you then.